Hello everyone, welcome back to Omegon 2 Electric Boogaloo. Today we are going to be talking about masculinity. This one's interesting. We have one source from The Independent, because they talk about a certain type of modern masculinity. I would like to talk about that particular iteration of masculinity and other forms, along with why some are championed and why others are not. The same set of rules can in fact be applied to femininity too. If you'd like to go beyond the binary into the other realms of unpronounceable names and genders and pronouns and other things, expressions, you can. It should be noted, many forms of masculinity and femininity are tied to sexuality as well, understandably so. So it shall be quite the challenge for us to understand what it is, the point that is Joseph Bobowitz is trying to put across. Yes, Bobowitz is a name, and perhaps critique where critique is relevant. Subversive, dangerous, boring? How the red carpet became a barometer for modern masculinity. From Timothy Chalamet in a backless suit to Lucien Laviscount's corsage and evening gloves, red carpet menswear has become as much an exercise in mass marketing as an opportunity to dismantle gender rules, writes Joseph Bobowitz. I've always viewed the red carpet as an unneeded, unnecessary, pointless display of trying to stand out as much as possible, appealing to one's narcissism. The red carpet is, to the vast majority, well and truly redundant. It might be argued to be a form of trend setting, but as is often the case for masculinity and femininity at these events, it's only those that look to stand out more than everyone else that get any coverage, whether good or bad. If you turn up in just something very simple, there's a chance you might be noticed, because you could well be the only person looking like you have a sense of decorum, as opposed to those who go with the most outlandish. If you can't think of a time when you've heard of a celebrity or somebody famous in some field somewhere wearing something that looks well and truly vulgar, ridiculous, pointless, wasteful, an outfit only ever worn once, designed by somebody who clearly huffs their own farts and receives far too much money from gullible dipshits like the people who are typically on the red carpet. If you can't tell, I don't really care for red carpets, but if we're going to base this on the 4 people used in the image of the article, I'm not entirely convinced, for even a moment, that this is what you can call modern masculinity. It's an iteration of masculinity, but let's give this article a fair chance. For a masterclass in masculinity, look no further than the red carpet, an international circuit of events charting the good, the bad, and the ugly of manhood today. A stage for fashion designers to present their vision of the male zeitgeist. The red carpet is more than an exercise in mass marketing, but also an opportunity to chime in on gender identity, nowadays to the point of exhaustion. Whether it is Harry Styles in a Gucci Diamante studded jumpsuit, Billy Porter in a Christian Siriano gowned tuxedo, or Timothy Chalamet in a Hader Ackerman backless crimson suit. Looks that brush against gender are now par for the course alongside a brand's more classic display of elegance. Does anyone miss classic displays of elegance? Or is it just me? It fascinates me how the events themselves that involve a red carpet have changed. These spectacles used as an excuse for you to then flaunt your worth because you've paid stupid amounts of money for an outfit, while also ensuring as many cameras are on you as possible to promote your brand. I find there to be a lack of sincerity in a vast amount of these outfits, in favor of how can I in turn make more money from looking as ridiculous as possible while having zero sincerity in what it is I actually believe, or push, promote, endorse. By the way, male zeitgeist, I don't consider this a defining spirit or mood, more a damning indictment for what is being tolerated. While we might have reached camp fatigue, it's worth noting that the abundance of kitsch and dandy looks on the red carpet are a relatively new phenomenon. Indeed, before 2017, you would be hard-pressed to find anything wilder than a scooping lapel, or clutch his pearls, a choice hue on a guest dinner jacket. Yes, the likes of David Bowie, Little Richard, Boy George were pushing their luck yonks ago, but their scrapes with femininity were exceptions to the rule. Today it's a whole different game. You don't get to make one rule for me and thee and all this nonsense. You don't get to fob off other people who were pushing the envelope. Also, it's not just those that are men who are doing this or have been doing this. Plenty of women have been for generations. Those men that are championed now, a lot of them themselves kind of skirt between male and female when it comes to that identity, or they choose non-binary. It's why you see the Daily Mail cover Sam Smith in abundance, because Sam Smith, if you didn't know, which is referenced in every single Daily Mail article, is non-binary. Many people just notice a pudgy fish of them in feminine clothing that belongs in the 80s. Academics have been picking scabs in masculinity since Oscar Wilde was flicking his literary wrists. In the last half-decade, though, every man, and their dog has been reckoning with the term, from CEOs warning against the effects of toxic masculinity on leadership to podcasters encouraging a new, vulnerable kind of masculinity to improve mental health. Elsewhere, the term has titled exhibitions such as Barbican's Masculinity's Liberation Through Photography and the V&A's blockbuster Fashioning Masculinities, all while our blue screen devices are blazed with discourse about it and its caricatures, be it gouty politicians, 20-something Bitcoin bros, or aggrieved incels. Nowhere, though, has masculinity been as talked about as on the red carpet. I wonder why that is, especially when you fob off types of discourse as being that of politicians who are out of touch with all reality, Bitcoin bros who I assume you think are jocks when really they're just nerds who are smarter than you, and aggrieved incel, a way of fobbing off the rest of them. How about instead of pigeonholing people with labels, you have the discussion without trying to pigeonhole someone? Additionally, what the hell is Masculinity's Liberation Through Photography and V&A's blockbuster Fashioning Masculinities? I've never heard of these. I might seem a little naive here, but clearly not that important. The idea of CEOs warning against the effects of toxic masculinity fascinates me. In the UK, there are laws which promote the whole critical gender stuff about treating people equally in the workplace. And CEOs, there's so many of them that are male, and it's toxic masculinity, it's that bro environment. As we push to try and be more meritocratic, you always find out at the end, it's never about being equal, it's about who you know that can get you further in your career and life, to make you more prosperous, which is something, oddly enough, that translates straight to the red carpet. Am I right? Using masculinity as a way of making it seem like you are promoting a different message. I do agree with the idea of helping men come to terms with poor mental health, to try and find a path forward. It is not always about their masculinity. It really isn't. And it is not a vulnerable type of masculinity either to seek help. I've often found it quite common with women as well, who refuse to seek help when it is staring them in the face. The correct word to describe it isn't masculinity or femininity, it is called pride. I think it's largely down to their inherently spectacular nature, says ID's fashion features editor Mahoro Seward. Though they may not be on screen or stage, the people that typically walk red carpets are to their audiences still characters. The managers, publicists, and stylists responsible for these characters are critically aware of that and will consciously build a celebrity's image in a way they think appeals to a persona's audience, whether that's by kowtowing to convention or intentionally pushing at the boundaries. The article goes on to talk about how tuxedos and suits are typical male mainstays when it comes to the red carpet, and that people like Lil Nas, well, they choose something a little different, which is quite the contrast to someone like Daniel Craig in a Tom Ford tuxedo. Sarcasm. Groundbreaking! Among ubiquity, even the lightest tweak can stand out. To paraphrase Judith Butler's thesis on gender trouble, never heard of it, it's about the cultural maintenance and desecration of norms, because men by and large wear black tie on the red carpet. This became coded as male. Add to this that men were often assumed to be heterosexual, and we see how the noble persona of a chaperone walking his female date held sway. With this came another restriction: don't drown out the woman. As a lady it went. She would perform a frilled-up rendition of femininity, her walker barely noticeable. Naturally, with this antiquated pageantry as a backdrop, difference from the norm comes into sharp focus. That said, in an industry as closely followed as showbiz, gender bending also arouses irritation or suspicion. Elsewhere, queer-identifying celebrities have even retreated into noticeably subtle or straight-coded dress in an ironic rejection of camp's co-option. Case in point, Frank Ocean's all-black Prada ensemble at the 2019 camp-themed Met Gala. Further down the article, ignoring this bullshit for a moment, It says, now the pendulum is swinging. As gender fluidity on the red carpet becomes de rigueur, the B-list has followed suit. I think it's set a precedent for other guys who want to be considered successful dressers. So we've seen Love Islanders start to wear skeleton blouses, but celebrities with more esteem and more social capital don't want to look like that anymore, and they don't want to look like you. The case in point for this was the Oscars, where menswear was visibly dialed back. A feeling of reduction, conservatism, perhaps a correlation to inflation, but also the right-wing backlash against non-conforming displays of gender identity. God damn those right-wingers and their ramness! The article finishes by talking about certain turns of phrases, like cock in a frock. Don't care about that. But the last part I want to read, maybe the seed of menswear next half-decade rebellion lie in fetish and sex appeal, as the most eyebrow-raising looks at the Vanity Fair party might suggest. Certainly they felt exciting, but will they one day feel passé as men find other ways of testing masculinity? One thing is sure, the red carpet will always be the best place to find them. Yes, because the red carpet is where all narcissists go. If this is a modern form of masculinity, I'm not a fan of it. It looks like crap. This is not trend setting, I can promise you that, because again, it only really takes place on the red carpet. You're not going to see someone walking down the street looking like a gimp, perhaps with a butt plug tail on display. Why? Highly inappropriate. People choose their battlefield to show off their caricature, as you yourself reference. These caricatures are embarrassing. Some of them aren't even masculinity as a form of masculinity. It is based on their sexual identity as well. A lot of this ties in quite handily. You can try and throw random studies at me that might be well received and highly respected, but the reality is always quite simple. Occam's razor in full effect. Attention seekers will do what they have to get attention. It's why in the more casual environments where blue-collar workers exist, you won't see this crap. Why? Because no one cares. They really don't. You may have your followers online that say, oh, you go girl, sister, and whatever else. Reality is no one cares. They really don't. Your clout counts for shit. If this is modern masculinity, masculinity might need a reset.